and continuing behind the scenes information which we began in part 2. Patrick Troughton makes no appearance in episode 2 as he was on holiday during the week when it was recorded. The Doctor is seen only as an unconscious figure, with Chris Jeffries doubling for Troughton. Similarly, Anne Riddler was not rehired for episode 6 after her character's death in the previous episode, so the deceased Gemma Corwin is represented by a double, and photographs of Riddler are used for close-ups of Corwin's body. Deborah Watling's appearance as Victoria in episode 1 was a recap from the end of the previous story, Fury from the Deep. Unusually, Watling received an on-screen credit for this appearance despite not having any lines. The Cyber Planner has exactly the same voice as the Cyber Controller from the Tomb of the Cybermen. Several characters were renamed to give the crew an international feel. Nell Corwin became Gemma Corwin, Tanya Lerner's surname was changed to the Russian Lernov, Tom Stone gained a promotion when he was rechristened Captain Leo Ryan, Harry Carpy became the Italian knight Enrico Casal, and Ken was switched to the Asian Chang. Tristan DeVere Cole and Peter Bryant clashed on set, reportedly because DeVere Cole preferred to talk to the writers and script editor to make changes and not to the producer, and made changes to the script. Bryant would also later allege that DeVere Cole had exceeded his budget and lodged a complaint with Sean Sutton. DeVere Cole never directed for the show again. It's a pretty well directed serial for what it is. Not outstanding, not Camfield tier, or even whoever directed the Space Museum could have done a good job here potentially. That's almost more well directed, spaceship set, kind of lost in ship vessel in space sort of set, and understanding of the spaciousness, what it's like to mapping out the interior of one of those things. Anyway, this is the last story that voice actor Peter Hawkins worked on. This is the last incomplete Doctor Who story to have telesnaps, and is also the last story to be telesnapped in its entirety. John Cura did take telesnaps for the Dominators and the Mind Robber, but only for episodes 1 to 4 and episodes 1 to 3 respectively. Anne Riddler barely made it through one scene after inadvertently damaging her sciatic nerve. As a result, she spent the rest of the serial on painkillers. The Cyber Planner was originally envisaged as a regular Cyberman attached by wires to a special chair. The John Smith alias was inspired by a stethoscope box bearing the label John Smith and Associates. 2 new Cybermen costumes were created for this serial, but during rehearsals they proved problematic. The exoskeleton added by costume designer Martin Bohr did not work well, and the new vinyl material became visibly wrinkled. It was agreed that the outfits would have to be replaced for studio recordings. A spray-painted wetsuit now made up the body of the costume, while the exoskeleton was simplified and reconfigured. The unusual 3-fingered gloves were retained. Oh, this is interesting. The spacesuits worn by Jamie and Zoe, previously seen in the 10th planet, and I mentioned it in those retrospectives too, later turned up as costumes in Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope and Star Wars Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back. Most famously worn by Bosk, the bounty hunter, legendary character. We have to remember that Star Wars, the original trilogy, was shot at Pinewood Studios in the UK, of course. Maybe I'll read out some of these myths associated with the episode. This story went considerably over budget, as claimed before. Apparently it was one of the few stories of the Second Doctor's era to come in under budget. And of course we know this is not the case. There is a suspenseful scene in which the 2 Cybermen menace Zoe in the Wheels library. Of course there is no such scene. Photographs that exist of this were specially posed for publicity purposes only, and for Solid Space's Space Museum album cover, of course. Only 2 Cyberman costumes were used in the making of this story, but actually a third was put together from stock for the sequence in episode 6, when a force of Cybermen spacewalked toward the wheel. Good sequence. It's a good thing that one's available, because in telesnaps we would think, oh, imagine how this looked. Well, we get to see how it looks, and it's not as good as we could hope it would look, really, but it looks kind of cool all the same. Eric Flynn, who plays Leo Ryan in this story, was the son of Hollywood film star Errol Flynn. Actually, Eric Flynn has no relation to Errol Flynn. And we'll close it here. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it immensely.